Imagine the eternal city of Rome, its marble forums gleaming under the Mediterranean sun, a metropolis of 1,000,000 souls where aqueducts carried fresh water from distant mountains and roads stretched like veins across an empire that spanned 3 continents. Yet, beneath this veneer of invincibility, cracks were forming, not from barbarian hordes alone, but from an economic rot that eroded the foundations of power. How could the wealthiest empire in history, built on gold and conquest, collapse into poverty and chaos? The real reason lies not in a single cataclysm, but in a cascade of financial missteps that turned abundance into ruin. The story begins in the empire's golden age, under the rule of emperors like Trajan and Hadrian in the 2nd century AD. Rome had transformed from a modest republic into a superpower through relentless expansion. Conquests brought vast territories, from Britain to Egypt, flooding the treasury with tribute, slaves, and resources. Agriculture thrived on large estates worked by captive labor, while trade routes carried spices from the east, grain from North Africa, and olive oil from Spain. The economy hummed on a stable currency, the silver denarius and gold aureus, symbols of Roman reliability. Taxes were collected efficiently, funding grand public works, legions, and the bread and circuses that kept the populace content. At its peak around 117 AD, the empire controlled over 5 million square kilometers, with a population nearing 60 million, generating wealth that dwarfed any rival. But prosperity sowed the seeds of decline. As expansion slowed after Trajan's campaigns, new sources of wealth dried up. No more easy conquests meant fewer slaves pouring into the markets. Once numbering in the millions, their influx halved by the 3rd century. Farms and workshops, dependent on this free labor, faced shortages. Workers demanded higher wages, pushing up costs. Meanwhile, the military, the empire's backbone, grew ever more expensive. With borders stretching thousands of miles, defending against Parthians in the east and Germanic tribes in the north required constant funding. Emperors like Commodus, who ruled until 192 AD, squandered reserves on personal excesses, leaving the treasury bare upon his assassination. The turning point came with the crisis of the 3rd century, a period of near anarchy from 235 to 284 AD. Over 20 emperors rose and fell in rapid succession, often murdered by their own troops. Political instability fueled economic turmoil. To pay restless soldiers, rulers resorted to debasing the currency, mixing cheaper metals into coins while keeping their face value. Nero had started this in 64 AD, reducing the silver in denarii by 10% to fund rebuilding after the Great Fire. But by the 270s, under emperors like Aurelian, the denarius contained just 0.02% silver, essentially becoming worthless bronze. Inflation spiraled. A measure of wheat that cost 2 denarii in the 1st century soared to 200 by the 3rd. Prices doubled every few years, eroding savings and trust in the system. As inflation raged, taxation became a weapon of desperation. Emperors hiked levies on landowners and merchants to absurd levels, sometimes demanding payment in kind, like grain or livestock, when cash was scarce. The senatorial elite, once the empire's financial pillars, were targeted first. Their estates confiscated to fill imperial coffers. This drove the wealthy to evade taxes by fleeing to rural villas, establishing self-sufficient domains that foreshadowed medieval feudalism. The poor fared worse. Peasants, burdened by escalating demands, abandoned fields en masse, seeking refuge in cities or selling themselves into debt bondage. By the late 4th century, laws under emperors like Valens tied workers to the land, forbidding them from leaving their occupations, a grim precursor to serfdom. Agricultural output plummeted, with once fertile provinces like Gaul and Italy turning fallow. Trade, the bloodline of Rome's interconnected economy, ground to a halt amid these pressures. Mediterranean shipping, vital for importing grain to feed Rome's masses, was disrupted by piracy and invasions. In 439 AD, the Vandals seized North Africa, Rome's granary, cutting off supplies and turning the sea into a hostile frontier. Commerce routes decayed as inflation made long-distance trade unprofitable. Merchants hoarded goods rather than risk devalued payments. The empire's vast road network, built for military efficiency, now facilitated only the movement of invading armies. By the 5th century, the Western Empire's economy had contracted severely. GDP estimates suggest a drop of up to 50% from its 2nd century heights. Delving deeper, the mechanisms at play reveal a systemic failure. Currency debasement created a vicious cycle. As coins lost value, the government minted more to meet expenses, accelerating inflation. This hyperinflation paralyzed markets. Bartering replaced money in many regions. Taxation policies alienated key producers, farmers and artisans, who saw little return for their labors, leading to widespread apathy and corruption. Officials extorted bribes, further draining resources. Military overspending compounded the issue. The army swelled to over 600,000 men by the 4th century, consuming half the budget. Reforms under Diocletian in 284 AD attempted to stabilize prices through edicts capping wages and costs, but these failed, breeding black markets and evasion. Constantine's shift to a gold-based solidus in 324 AD helped the Eastern Empire, but the West, poorer and more invaded, couldn't adapt. Echoes of Rome's downfall resonate in today's world. Modern nations grapple with ballooning debts from military engagements, much like Rome's frontier wars. Currency manipulation through quantitative easing or deficit spending mirrors debasement, risking inflation spikes as seen in recent global crises. Over-reliance on cheap labor, whether slaves then or outsourced workers now, exposes economies to disruptions. Geopolitical overextension, from empires to superpowers, strains resources. Think of how supply chain breakdowns like those in the Mediterranean under the Vandals parallel today's trade wars and piracy in vital straits. Institutions like the IMF warn of similar pitfalls. Unchecked spending and inequality can fracture even the strongest systems. In the end, Rome's economic collapse teaches a timeless truth. Empires are not felled by swords alone, but by the quiet erosion of trust in their foundations. What began as a pursuit of endless growth ended in fragmentation, the Western Empire dissolving in 476 AD when the last emperor was deposed. Yet from its ashes rose lessons in resilience, reminding us that true power lies not in conquest, but in sustainable balance. The sun sets over the Roman Forum one final time in 476 AD. A teenage boy, Romulus Augustulus, is led from the imperial palace in Ravenna. No trumpets, no legions marching to his defense, just a quiet handover of power to a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer, who sends the imperial regalia back to Constantinople with a simple message. The West no longer needs its own emperor. The greatest empire the world had ever seen does not end in fire or glory. It ends in bankruptcy, in empty treasuries, worthless coins, abandoned farms, and a people who had long stopped believing the system could protect them. Rome did not fall because it lacked soldiers. It fell because it could no longer pay them. It did not fall because it lacked land. It fell because no one was left to work it. And it did not fall because it lacked gods. It fell because it had lost faith in the one thing that truly held an empire together. A currency people trusted, a government that delivered, and an economy that rewarded effort instead of punishing it. 2,000 years later, whenever a nation prints money without restraint, borrows beyond its means, lets its infrastructure crumble while its armies multiply, or taxes its producers into silence, the ghost of Rome stirs. The lesson is not that empires must fall. The lesson is that they fall the same way. Slowly, then all at once. When the money stops meaning anything, and the people stop believing in tomorrow. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share it, because some warnings are too important to stay buried in history.